OpenAI's GPT-56 is finally publicly available, with the Soul model leading the pack. And right out of the gate, it begs the question, does this finally knock Fable 5 off its throne as the ultimate frontier model? To answer that, we have to look at how we're actually using these tools. Right now, a lot of power users are treating Fable 5 as a hammer and every single prompt as a nail. But routing every email triage, formatting job, and simple code request through a heavy, logic-optimized model leads to massive overspending. Take a look at this scorecard comparing token costs. Fable 5 charges $10 per million input tokens and a massive $50 per million for output. GPT-5.6 Soul, on the other hand, comes in right around $5 for input and drops the output cost down to $30 per million. As this chart updates to show compounding costs, you can see how heavily that $50 output rate punishes high-volume workflows. If you are running thousands of API calls daily, using Fable 5 for every task quickly drains your budget. Selecting a model based on how it aligns with specific daily tasks saves more time than chasing raw intelligence scores in a vacuum. We can divide this into two clear user profiles: the developer, who needs rigorous architectural logic to build software, and the marketer, who needs highly subjective, creative execution for knowledge work. Effectively routing your tasks between these two models determines the overhead and the throughput of your entire AI workflow. Let's start with the developer baseline. We put these models through complex coding tests to see how well they could structure multi-layered software from scratch. One test required the models to build a visually stunning, explorable 3D model of an apartment from a TV show right in the browser. This demands object permanence, accurate spatial awareness, and a deep understanding of architectural layout. GPT-56 Soul rendered some pleasing textures, but it completely broke the layout. The spatial logic was entirely off, rooms were crammed together, and it hallucinated random furniture. Fable 5 successfully parsed that complex architectural logic. It correctly mapped the bedrooms, kitchen, and living room, rendering an accurate, explorable 3D environment. We can map these capabilities on this 2x2 efficiency matrix, with deep logic on the vertical axis and creative nuance on the horizontal. Fable 5 sits firmly in the top left. It excels at rigid structure. We pushed this further with a mechanical test, coding a fully functional, playable Rubik's Cube. GPT-56 Soul output a gorgeous, beautifully styled user interface, but the cube itself was totally broken. The mechanical functionality failed entirely. Fable 5 took slightly longer to think, but it delivered a zero-shot, working mechanical puzzle. Lu could scramble the cube, and it would calculate the exact sequence to solve it. Fable 5 is a grinder. It prioritizes flawless mathematical logic and back-end mechanics over snappy generation speeds or beautiful front-end web design. When you are building complex software architecture, paying Fable 5's $50 premium is mathematically justified. It will save you hours of manual debugging. Next, we tested the executive baseline. This covers structured business outputs, nuanced writing, and creative formatting, the daily tasks of a knowledge worker. We asked the models to organize raw data into a cohesive, well-designed PowerPoint deck. This shows the result: a polished presentation with a space-themed aesthetic and well-structured data charts. GPT-5.6 Soul generated a complete, ready-to-download, fully formatted presentation that handled the data architecture and the design simultaneously. Fable 5, by contrast, output rigid, uninspired cards. It delivered the raw data, but lacked any creative design intuition for how a human would actually read a slide. We then ran a brand revamp test for a failing airline, requiring the models to write persuasive marketing copy and create visual web mockups. 5.6 Soul crushed it. It delivered clever copywriting, even dropping in a few self-aware jokes, alongside superior web layouts and a nuanced understanding of brand tone. Updating our quadrant chart, you see where GPT-5.6 Soul dominates. It plots heavily in the bottom right quadrant, prioritizing high creative nuance. There is a massive gap in capabilities between these models, depending on the task type. They are not interchangeable. The core trade-off is control. Using 5.6 Soul means trusting an AI to make highly subjective decisions about design, layout, and tone, rather than executing deterministic math. For marketers and knowledge workers, GPT-5.6 Soul delivers vastly superior creative packaging for nearly half the output price. It is the undeniable choice for business execution. The final axis to measure is how these models handle multi-agent workflows, speed, and parallel processing. OpenAI introduced a new ultra effort level for 5.6 Soul. When activated, it automatically coordinates 4 agents in parallel to tackle rapid-fire tasks in terminal environments. This parallel processing allows 5.6 Soul to execute quick, decisive actions on your machine significantly faster than Fable 5. It is built for burst speed. Fable 5 takes a different approach with dynamic workflows. It actually writes a physical program on your computer to spawn agents. It's a slower process, but because it stores results in the program's variables rather than the model's context window, it can scale to hundreds of agents without losing memory. 5.6 Soul operates like a sprinter for rapid, contained desktop execution. Fable 5 serves as the endurance runner for boundless, massive system architecture. If you want to optimize your time and your budget, you have to abandon the idea of a single daily driver model entirely. Your model selection starts entirely with your end goal, splitting into 3 distinct pathways. For complex logic, rely on Fable 5 to guarantee code functions properly. For creative design, route tasks to 5.6 Soul for beautiful layouts. But the most advanced option is hybrid orchestration. In this hybrid stack, Fable 5 acts as the master architect. It writes the dynamic workflow plans and handles the deep logic, while spawning 5.6 Soul sub-agents to execute the creative and formatting work. The single trade-off here is the upfront investment. It requires real time and effort to build these custom API pipelines to get the 2 models talking. Routing the right task to the right tool yields a more efficient result than any single model could on its own. Use Fable 5 to engineer the engine and GPT-5.6 Soul to design the car.